Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this HR 30 today. We are delighted to be talking about mindfulness today and delighted to have with us Karen Sandelman and Laura Gold, two experts in mindfulness. And they will introduce themselves and tell us a bit about themselves before starting. I want to just take care of a few things housekeeping-wise, just so that you know. We have a chat box open, so if you have any comments, you can put them in there. We also have a questions box here that you can type a question in if you have one as we go along, and we'll have time for a few questions at the end. We also have two polls that we're going to be using today, so get ready for that and to answer our two questions as we move forward. So I will turn it over to Karen and Laura. It's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Karen Sandelman. Laura and I are really happy to be joining you on this beautiful day to talk about our passion, which is bringing mindfulness into the workplace. Just a little bit about me and then a little bit about Laura, and we'll plunge right in. I spent over 20 years in corporate leadership at Freddie Mac, working in commercial real estate finance, managing large groups of staff, large networks of important business relationships, and a couple of really critical business. So needless to say, it was a pressure cooker. And as a manager, it became really important for me to focus on the well-being of my team and the individuals in my team. And thankfully, I had a mindfulness practice that I started about 20 years ago. And what I discovered was, as I started to bring it into the workplace and let it be part of the way I led my team, it wasn't just beneficial for me, but it became beneficial for everybody that I was in contact with. And so over the years, as mindfulness became more mainstream, I began sharing it with others more openly. I started teaching about 5 years ago in the corporate world, and it was such a transformative experience for me that I actually left a really successful career a few years ago to do this work full-time. And now my primary responsibilities are to oversee the teaching side of our business, A Mindful Choice, in partnership with Laura, who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Fagans-Gould. I am a developmental psychologist and researcher. My research has focused on understanding the development of stress and coping in adolescents and adults and the impact of mindfulness on aspects of well-being. Kind of more recently, my research has started to break apart mindfulness programs to examine what are the most useful or kind of impact-producing components of these programs. I became interested in mindfulness actually in grad school, where I took a course in it, and it really so profoundly changed sort of my own personal, emotional, and physical well-being that it became the focus of my research program and professional endeavors from that point forward. Beth, it's asking me to share, I'm sorry everyone, Beth is asking me to share my screen, so if you could just pause a moment and wait for me to get it up, open it on my screen, then I can do that.
Okay, if you'd prefer to hand the controls back to me, I can do that.
Okay.
So while Laura and Beth are working on the slides, this is Karen again, and I will just kind of catch everybody up on what we're going to be focusing on today, which is really the broad topic of stress, and then much more specifically, how mindfulness can play a critical role in helping us reduce many of the negative consequences that stress can have on us physiologically and psychologically, and really in all aspects of our well-being, and provide like a solid foundation for us to thrive from. So we're going to do a poll, although I don't see the poll up yet, but maybe we're getting there.
Why don't we move forward on that until I get the controls back? And once I do, then we can do the poll.
Okay, we'll come back to the poll in a moment.
Okay.
And maybe you can just reflect for a moment, just in anticipation of the poll. What we'd like everybody who's joining us today to do is just reflect a little bit on what your own experience of stress is and then also what you think your coworkers' experience of stress is. So I'll just plant that seed and we'll come back to it in a moment. And what we're looking at, which probably isn't a big surprise to most of the people who are participating in the webinar, is a situation where stress, high levels of stress, are really rampant, not just in this country, but in general in the workplace. And many people are living in a state of acute hyperarousal of their stress responses. And what that does is put an enormous amount of pressure on our bodies that our bodies really aren't designed to withstand. Our bodies are meant to have a stress response. It's a healthy thing, actually, to be able to respond to stress. It's a survival instinct. But because we have so much pressure in our culture, such chronic pressure, our stress response is on nearly all the time. And that's not sustainable. That's not a healthy arrangement. So I see that the slides are up right now. Beth, is it possible to go back to the poll, or should we skip it? It's not critical.
We can do the poll.
Okay, so
we can do it.
Let's do it and just check in and get a sense. So we have a 4-point scale with the lowest rating being number 1, which is experiencing a low level of stress, and the highest rating being off the charts. So low, medium, high, or off the charts, just reflecting back over the last week or so, getting a sense of what your stress level has been. If you're comfortable participating in the poll, it'll be sort of fun to get a sense of where the group is at. And I see that results are coming in, and we're going to share those with you in just a moment. So we don't need to overthink this. It can just be a gut check.
Yeah, we'll do the gut check. I'll close it out now and share it and see where we are.
Okay, so we do have an expert researcher with us. Laura, do you want to comment?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it looks like people are reporting, most people are reporting fairly medium levels of stress. I actually think that that's a little bit lower than sort of what the average people report. So that's really nice to hear for everybody. Certainly 26% of people are reporting high, and, a few people are off the charts, but so medium to high levels overall.
Okay, and we have a second poll, which is really trying to stand in the shoes of our coworkers, or if we manage a team, our team, and just get a sense of what we think their stress level has been, particularly in the workplace, because that's really where we're most familiar with their experience. And thank you. I see a lot of people have voted. We're just waiting for a few more, and then we'll close it out. And what we're trying to do is just get a sense of, like, what's the environment like that we're living in? How much are we steeping in this elevated stress?
Interesting. So looks like there's people are reporting slightly higher levels of stress for kind of other coworkers. Nobody, 0% reported low, although 0% reported off the chart. So kind of in the middle of medium or high levels of stress for coworkers.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So we can go back to the slides. And the truth of the matter is that physiologically, we will be better off if we're experiencing stress much less frequently, because the body is meant to go into that stress response really in acute situations when we really have severe danger that we need to deal with. So we've been lingering a little bit on this sense of sort of bad news that many of us feel that well-being, balance, a sense of even happiness are sort of future states that are going to happen when something occurs in our lives to be healthier, happier, more balanced. And we can all fill in the blank, whatever that future thing might be that we think we're waiting for. And the real question is, why not now? Why not find our way to balance and well-being right now? And so there's good news. The good news is we can actually learn to manage stress better. There are many tools that are out there, and one that has been proven to be highly effective with many scientific studies that have been conducted in recent years is practicing mindfulness. And what scientists have discovered is that when we practice mindfulness, we actually turn on the body's natural relaxation response, which is the exact opposite of the stress response. And when we're able to do that, it nourishes the body. It gives us a chance to rest and replenish and really recover and hit our reset button. So we kind of come back to center, are regrounded, and have an opportunity to start from a healthier place. So I want to just talk a little bit about what mindfulness is. I suspect that most of you have heard about it in recent years. It's gotten a great deal of press, and it's kind of hard to miss it, which is a wonderful thing, although we want to make sure that it doesn't get trivialized or misrepresented. So essentially, mindfulness is becoming much more aware of what's going on in our lives. And that means looking inside us, which we tend to not do very often unless there's something really intense happening, and also what's going on around us. And we can use that information, we can use that level of awareness to start to make better choices for ourselves that will lead to greater health and greater balance and greater engagement with our lives. There's a definition on the slide that you have in front of you that's from one of the leaders of secular mindfulness in this country, Jon Kabat-Zinn. And it's a really simple definition that starts with paying attention to what's happening right now in a kind way. And that's a definition that's really a handy one to have. And the truth of the matter is that when we pay attention in this way, we can show up differently. I'll give you a little bit of an example of what that might look like in our daily work life. For example, you may be in a high-stakes meeting with a lot of people in the meeting that you would like to present yourself to your very best, and it's your turn to say something, and it doesn't come out the way you would have liked it to. And you have an immediate sense of regret or doubt, and a couple of things can happen in this situation that are very common for most of us. We can either go back into the past and start replaying the event 100 different ways about how we might have represented ourselves, or we might actually plunge into the future about the consequences of how we represented ourselves. Maybe it was career limiting. We can go on, fabricating stories in our heads, and what happens when we do that is we're not there for the rest of the meeting. We're lost in the story of what happened. If we have a mindfulness practice, a greater level of awareness, what might happen is we may still say something a little bit awkwardly. Maybe we're a little nervous, or just for whatever reason it doesn't come out the way we expected it to. But we're going to notice very quickly signs of embarrassment, signs of whatever feeling may be coming up in us. And with a great deal of self-compassion and kindness, we can calm ourselves down and ask ourselves, what's needed right now for me to show up the way I need to and be engaged for the rest of this experience? And that gives us a chance to kind of take back control for ourselves rather than get lost in an emotional experience. So that's just one simple example. Maybe it resonates for you. If it doesn't, there are plenty of others. The bottom line is, I think many of us at work experience this sense of drinking from the fire hose. An old coworker of mine used to always use that expression, that there was so much coming at us all the time that it was really very difficult to take it all in and to respond. And it was very easy to become overwhelmed in those circumstances, making it hard to prioritize, hard to focus. And in that environment where we have all this data flying at us, of course exacerbated by technology, mindfulness has really become a critical skill that can be very grounding and help us move from this place where we're kind of back on our heels, reactive and defensive, to a place where we're really able to come back to being centered, grounded, clear, and calm. And with that kind of strength, we can filter what's coming at us, prioritize what we need to focus on, and then make choices that are really going to help us navigate and manage effectively. So it's ultimately very self-empowering. It puts us squarely in the driver's seat. And obviously this is my passion. So I may be making this sound a little bit like a superpower, and it's really not. It's just a natural ability that we all have. So Probably everybody here has experienced this sense of being in a flow state or being in the zone where everything is just clicking. And that's a natural state that we can cultivate. And like anything that we want to get better at, we just have to practice. So I can keep talking about mindfulness. I love to talk about mindfulness, as maybe you can tell. And maybe it's fun for you to listen. Maybe it's fun to read about it or write about it. But the truth of the matter is that mindfulness is experiential. And so the only way to really know what it is, if you haven't tried it out, is to actually go ahead and try it out. So I'm going to invite you to try a brief practice with me. And maybe even just right this minute, notice how you feel about that. Because I recognize that you may be in a space that doesn't feel very conducive to practicing something like mindfulness. So I want to assure you that nobody else needs to know what you're doing. All we're going to do is spend a couple of minutes tuning into our internal experience and to what's happening around us. So if you can, try to adopt a sense of curiosity and just say, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Why not? And we begin by softening our gaze because our vision is so strong that it tends to be the most prominent sense that we experience. So you can simply look down softly at your desk, glance down at your lap, pretend you're reading a piece of paper, whatever's going to be comfortable for you in the space that you're in. If you have privacy and you want to close your eyes, that's fine too. We're just going to know bodies are breathing. So just as you soften your gaze, you might feel your body breathing, you might feel your heart beating, and we can notice if we're carrying tension in our bodies. So you might want to check your hands and just notice if they're tight or loose, and just loosen them up. You might check your abdomen. We hold a lot of tension in our stomachs, in our bellies. See if you can release. You might notice your shoulders. You might even want to pull them up to your ears and roll them back and let them drop down and away from the ears, almost sensing the tension melting from your shoulders. And then check your jaw and see if you can allow a little space between the upper teeth and the lower teeth. And then just notice the muscles of the face, your brow, your forehead, your temples may be a little tense. They may have wrinkled up. See if you can soften them, softening the cheeks and the skin around the lips. Just noticing how the body feels when you invite the body to relax. Feeling yourself sitting in your chair, maybe feeling your feet making contact with the floor. Letting yourself come into a posture that allows you to be relaxed, also allows you to be alert. Just feeling how you are. Now we'll intentionally shift our attention to the breath. And if it's comfortable for you, take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. And as you breathe in through the nose, if that's possible for you, sensing the refreshing and nourishing, revitalizing quality of the air. Maybe imagining it replenishing every cell in your body. And then as you exhale, imagining the air taking with it what is already depleted and no longer useful. Just a few of these deep breaths. You might notice where your mind is. And if your mind has wandered, that's totally natural. That's what the mind does. And what this practice is about is training the mind to come back. And when we train the mind to come back, we really strengthen our ability to pay attention. So we can bring our attention back to the body sitting however it's sitting. You might notice how you're feeling in this moment. Maybe noticing the air touching your skin and the sounds that are around you. And then just gently, as you're ready, lifting your gaze. Coming back into the space you're in. Just noticing how you're feeling, maybe noticing whether there's any change in the way you're feeling. was a very brief practice, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and maybe you did notice a change. And if you care to, you could just jot a word or a phrase in the chat box. We could see how people experienced that. And my guess is that there were a range of experiences. For some people, that might have been very relaxing. For some people, that might have just made them notice how spun up they feel. And so we're not trying to fabricate a feeling. We're just tuning into what's real, to what's really happening. And I'm not seeing comments coming into the chat box. I don't know if I'm missing them or if people maybe don't have access to the chat box. So
I think it's in the questions section. We have one person say that she felt calm, peace.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for
Relieved.
participating. So there's
relieved in there also, just to get them all in there.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And like I said, if you had an experience that was different than that, where you felt your heart racing and you noticed a lot of tightness and maybe a lot of anxiety, okay, too, we can use that information to figure out what we actually need in order to get back to our best so that we can engage with whatever it is we need to engage with. And so this was, like I said, a very, very brief practice. There's a lot of evidence around prolonged practice. And I don't mean practicing like that for a long time. I mean for many weeks and months in our lives. And Laura's going to speak to some of the research. There's a great deal of research that's been done in recent years, and there's a tremendous amount more underway about the benefits of practicing mindfulness. So Laura, would you like to talk to that for a bit?
Sure. Yeah, so as Karen kind of briefly alluded to before, there's kind of this ever-growing evidence base that supports the impact of mindfulness on a variety of human functioning outcomes. So multiple scientific studies, not just one or two, but multiple studies have found that mindfulness improves our focus and concentration. That is, mindfulness helps improve our ability to attend to what is actually in front of us or the task at hand without getting distracted or worrying about the future or reflecting on the past. Evidence supports mindfulness improves our stress management and resilience. So it reduces both of our experiences of stress, the emotional and physical aspects, and it also increases our ability to handle life's challenges and setbacks in ways that are just much more adaptive and health promoting. I think some of the most impressive evidence really comes in this neuroplasticity and immune functioning. So mindfulness, several studies have shown that even fairly brief mindfulness interventions increase the gray matter and the cortical thickness, which is really just a fancy way of saying that it enhances the parts of our brain responsible for our ability to self-regulate, monitor attention, increase our cognitive flexibility and our planning, problem solving, emotion regulation. It also helps to decrease our amygdala size, and that's the part of our brain that kind of is responsible for our fight-flight response or our fear-based reactions, and it helps us form new, more adaptive neural connections. Interestingly, it also improves our ability to fight disease and even slows the aging process by increasing telomere length, which are these little protective caps at the end of our DNA strands that allow for continued cellular replication. In addition, there's substantial evidence that mindfulness improves the quality of our relationships and the closeness we have with others. That is, when practiced, mindfulness increases our capacity for empathy and compassion, both for ourselves and for others, and our ability to communicate with others more effectively, meaning kind of in this more open and receptive, kind of a less judgmental way, not getting as defensive. So it really improves the quality of our communication and therefore our relationships in our lives.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So what's going on with mindfulness in the workplace? I'm guessing that some of you would like to hear about that. There's really an international movement underway that's very exciting, with companies all around the world bringing mindfulness into their workspace to help improve an overall sense of employee well-being, and then with that foundation really transform the work environment into a healthier, more open and thriving place. There's even a mindful leadership summit It's actually coming up in November in DC. If anybody's interested, you can just Google Mindful Leadership Summit. This is the 4th year of the summit. Last year, over 20 countries were represented with over 700 attendees. So it's really an exciting wave happening in the work arena, and it actually spans all types of work environments. Companies of all sizes, organizations with many different areas of focus, and you can see we listed a sampling on this slide just to give you a sense. All fields represented, and there's growing evidence related to specific workplace benefits that when people in the workplace practice, and especially when they practice together, that job performance tends to improve, communication and conflict resolution start to improve, people start to collaborate and gel as a team in different ways, and it breeds a sense of creativity and productivity that may be languishing. And there's additional evidence that when leaders practice, and I have personal experience with this, so I know firsthand that this is really true, that it has this incredible spillover benefit to everybody in their path, that the staff benefits, that cross-functional dynamics become healthier and more vibrant. There becomes this sense of honesty and trust that develops a little more organically and naturally. So you may be wondering about how you might be able to explore this, and we have some thoughts about that for you. And the number one thing, and maybe this would apply when you're bringing in any kind of training to an organization, would be to find the right team that's a good fit for your organization on a lot of different levels. And the first thing that we find from the evidence is that, particularly with mindfulness training, and again, maybe for other things as well, the trainer needs to have their own personal depth of experience as well as professional knowledge about mindfulness, and then appropriate and reputable professional training to teach secular mindfulness in the workplace. And then beyond the individuals that you line up with, the program itself should be able to align well with your own needs, whatever your organization's goals are, and fit well with your schedule and your approach to employee training and development. And it's important, if you're going to go down this road, to set realistic expectations and realize that, yes, we've laid out a lot of benefits, but mindfulness isn't a silver bullet, and it's not going to solve all problems, and people don't change overnight. So we have to be careful about what we promise and careful not to overpromise when mindfulness comes into an organization. It requires practice, and it will achieve certain goals. And just being careful to align with your goals appropriately. And related to this, it's really important that whatever you might choose to bring in, if you go down this route, that evaluation be an integral part of the program. And this is important because otherwise it's not clear whether you're actually affecting change, whether you're actually achieving the objectives that you've set out. So just a couple of things to be thinking about if you choose to go down this road. There are actually a lot of resources out there, many organizations that are offering services like this, a lot of books and recorded material. We have our own program. We're just going to share a tiny bit with you about what we've done. We've built a program based on best practices that are recommended by leaders in the field, and also based on leading research around mindfulness and behavior change, which is Laura's background. We have a comprehensive approach that looks at 3 different areas of impact, bringing mindfulness tools to individuals through workshops and foundational courses. And then once that foundation has been set, bringing relational skills to groups of people, which could be teams or just random groups of individuals within an organization that apply mindfulness to working relationships, and then working collectively at the organizational level to make sure that there are simple tools in place at the structural level in the organization that support sustainability. And that last piece is really crucial to ensure that ultimately mindfulness gets embedded in the culture of the organization and can really contribute to both employee and organizational well-being. So that's just a little bit about, yeah.
We're low on time, like about a minute left.
I'm done. So that was really everything we wanted to share, to just give you a taste of what mindfulness is and how you might be able to bring it into your workplace. And we'd love to entertain some questions if we have a couple minutes for that.
If you have a question, you can type it into the question box that you'll see on your control panel on the right. And if there are some we don't get to, we can certainly email you separately with answers to those questions. And on the screen, you'll see, while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, you'll see if you'd like further information, you can contact me at the email you see on the screen or the phone number. And just to let you know, our next HR 30 is going to be on December the 5th, and it's called Spotlight on Opioids and Other Emerging Drug Trends in the Workplace. So any questions? Let's see.
And Beth, while you're waiting for questions, I really do want to thank everyone for taking time during the middle of the day to join us. And I hope this is useful in some way as you think about your own well-being and the well-being of others around you. And really wishing you all the best.
Okay. Well, we can end there then. And please feel free, if you'd like any more information on mindfulness, to connect with Karen and Laura, please feel free to send me an email or give me a call, and I can pass along their information as well.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Beth, for having us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for all the great information.
Pleasure.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.